with Mark Warner. But if he is not, and if the Senate committee is now headed in the direction of where the House committee is, we are entering a very dangerous period, because if this becomes partisan, it will, and Donald Trump is given the encouragement of not just Republicans in the House, who he's kind of orchestrating, but Republicans in the Senate, that he can go ahead and fire any of the people you mentioned, that he can fire Rod Rosenstein, that he can get to firing Bob Mueller. If he seems like he has a permission slip from Republicans on both sides of Capitol Hill, the likelihood he will do it, which is already, I think, high, will become much, much higher if he thinks that he has that kind of backing from other members of the party.
And it's our understanding, NBC News' understanding, that Richard Burr was not at the White House today. Obviously, if you're watching, Senator, give us a call. We'd love to know where you come down on this. But what's your theory on sort of the disintegration of the bipartisan spirit of what at least seemed to have started as a bipartisan spirit of the two Intel committees' investigations into potential collusion between the Trump orbit and Russia?
I mean, I think it is the overwhelming narrative, which has been sort of a subtext for the entire year. Everyone's aware of it, but it sort of hasn't emerged very much, which is just the stark partisanship that exists in America today. Everyone knows it, but I don't think people really get
through it. It started with Devin Nunes, who was basically a stooge of the some Trump NSC staffer, who I think has since been fired in the Kelly regime. And I remember Sean Spicer calling me and said, "Ooh, you're going to hear a lot of this word unmasking," and I was like, "Ooh, I worked there 6 years, never heard that before." But you know, they tried to assassinate the character of Susan Rice. They've gone after Jim Comey. Jim Comey, who Democrats have more reason to hate and distrust than Republicans. I mean, all their Uranium One was going to be the big thing. Then you found out, I mean, if you tick through all of the fake scandals that the partisan Republicans on the Intel committees have tried to sort of throw up to I don't know what, to distract from them. But here's my question. Why don't they want to get to the bottom of Russian collusion? Why don't they care about that?
It's a totally fair question. I don't have an answer to it. I mean, I think that what I would point out, though, is that this overlay of partisanship, and I just want to point out that there was a poll that was done yesterday where Pew was actually asking people which was the most significant gulf in America, and they asked, is it race? Is it between black people and white people? And more people said it was between Democrats and Republicans. It had a very strong gulf there than between black and white people, which has been obviously a key issue this year. I just want to point that out because the Nunes thing itself stems from Donald Trump's weird tweet about Trump Tower being wiretapped, right? I mean, so this is people who recognize that there is a core base within the Republican Party who is stepping up and wants to stand with Donald Trump, who is staying allied with Donald Trump despite everything he's done over the course of the past year. And there is value from voters and there's value from conservative media in standing with Donald Trump no matter what the odds, because partisan tension is so high, because Republicans are on Team Republican and Democrats are on Team Democrat so forcefully that standing with Trump, despite all of his flaws, all of the flaws that we've talked about today and talked about every day, you know, since January 20th, despite that, partisanship carries the day.
And Donald Trump is the Republican president that they've got. If they want to do anything, he's the Republican president that they got. So they see this investigation as far as it's reaching into the Trump administration in part, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but in part as an obstruction, as an impediment to getting that across. And so muddying the waters, talking about Hillary Clinton, all these things are ways to sort of take to build more distrust into this investigation. And I think that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is that the more distrust that you build among the American people, the more credibility that you knock on Bob Mueller, the easier it is to have a situation where one of three things happen. Either Donald Trump feels emboldened enough to fire Bob Mueller, or Donald Trump when something goes down and there are more indictments, he issues pardons because he says that this whole investigation was so unfair, or he fires Attorney General Jeff Sessions, puts somebody else in and says, okay, well, this new Attorney General isn't recused, so thank you, Mr. Mueller, for your service. We don't need you anymore. Either way, it makes these things go away, and I think that's why Democrats are starting to really raise the red flag a lot more loudly right now, because they see all of these things happen, and they don't see either of those three outcomes as good for not just this investigation, but for democracy.
I mean, let me put this to you one more time. Are Republicans dead inside? What is wrong with, why don't Republicans care that a Republican-led Justice Department, a Republican-led FBI, led by men appointed by Donald Trump, is being smeared and the character of the men leading those agencies assassinated by people associated with the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party?
So I obviously can't answer for every Republican. I don't know how they think about this.
What's wrong with that?
I think in every one of these situations, there's a very simple transactional element, which is he is the president of the United States. We want to get some things done.
So
we will have to have
getting
that
a tax bill is more important than finding out if Russia meddled in the 2016 election and making sure they don't. Because as Marco Rubio said, next time it'll go the other way around. Next time the Russians will say, you know what, this guy's too wacky even for us.
I stipulate that, but I think they delude themselves, politicians are capable of this, of believing they can have it both ways. Let's get the tax bill. Let's not poke the bear until we're done with that thing. And then we'll worry about how he reacts to us saying, hey, this is not the way we play ball here. And so if you were to question him, you know, everything's personal. He's going to fire up the Twitter. You're going to lose the key votes you need to get it over the finish line.
Why are they afraid of his Twitter feed?
They're terrified of it. Are you kidding me?
Men in the Republican Party are terrified of it. That is the most pathetic thing I've heard all year.
No,
they're afraid of his tweets.
This is an extraordinary test.
This is presidential cover for their policy actions and their re-election. Of course they care. For you to believe otherwise is wrong.
That's because the voters love it.
This is
some voters.
I just think, look, this is an extraordinary test that's forthcoming for, I think, Senate Republicans most of all.
Yeah.
Because if the President of the United States believes that he has a permission slip from House and Senate Republicans to fire Bob Mueller, he will fire Bob Mueller.
Yes.
He wants to fire Bob Mueller. In his heart, he wants to fire Mueller. He does. Yeah. He does. He thinks the whole thing is illegitimate. He thinks the whole thing is a hoax. He thinks the whole thing is illegitimate. He thinks the whole thing is a witch hunt. He said it's a million times. And he doesn't think Bob Mueller, people around this table and every respectable Republican I know, and certainly most Democrats at this moment, regard Bob Mueller as an American hero. And you look at the history of his life, and there's no other conclusion but to come to than that he's an American hero beyond the reaches of party. And the president doesn't feel that way. The president wants to fire him, and he's just looking for a permission slip. House Republicans have already given it effectively. What Senate Republicans do may be the deciding factor in whether Bob Mueller survives or not.
All right, we have to sneak in one more break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.